Do you want to wait till
Yeah. And I'll just edit
I mean,
out.
we are in Long Branch, but we're in the nicer part, so that won't happen throughout the whole episode.
That or they're like on the way. There's a garage with two men. All right. Tim's kinda dumb. Let's help him get smart. It's time to teach Tim stuff. Hey, welcome to Time to Teach Tim. I got Angelo Gingerelli, and he's going to teach us how to start a comedy scene wherever you are.
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me.
Not much. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for doing this, and thank you for starting the South Jersey comedy scene.
I think that's a little grandiose, and what I played a part, right? And what I really, like, we'll talk about. I have a book coming out about this, and what I really probably go overboard about in a book and all social media and posting about it is, I don't think I'm ground zero for this whole thing happening, right?
Yeah.
I think I was part of the pebble that got thrown in the pond, and the butterfly effect takes us to where we are now.
Yeah.
But I felt I was a good person, that I had seen enough and been involved in enough that I could write a decent book, that if there's a kid in South Carolina or Montana or Texas, there's nothing going on around, they can get to, it took me 7 years and took us 7 years to get here. If somebody had these resources, could they get to what we did in 7 years in 2 or 3 years? And I took it from that perspective.
Yeah.
And I think I did a good job of kind of explaining it and my role in it. And I had successes and failures. That's the bottom line. I did stuff I will do again and do to death because it works and it was fun. And I did stuff I will never do again, so maybe someone can avoid some of those mistakes.
Yeah, and that's the same thing with everything. You're gonna fail, you're gonna do well, but if you don't learn, then you really fail.
Yeah, it's the cool thing about this podcast. You're kind of admitting the stuff you don't know and learning about it, which I think is good. But the thing that hit me, and not to overly promote the product here, but there's very little information about this, right?
Yeah.
Like most of the things that you've learned about on this podcast, I've listened to most of the episodes, you can... Shout out to Richard Dweck, right? But you could go down the Wikipedia rabbit hole and learn about Power Rangers if you wanted to, right?
Yeah.
The baseball episode was great. I'm a baseball fan myself, but you could have learned that info, right?
Yeah.
The issue with this comedy world thing is this info is not there, really.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we're both hockey fans, right? We're both big hockey fans. I'm an Islanders fan. You change your team year to year, so you're not real hardcore on any team apparently. So you're a bad fan. You're a bad hockey fan.
I am.
No,
well, no, I will root for my fantasy team to the end of the season or until I drop them.
But it's like if all the books about playing hockey were about the Stanley Cup, and there was no books out there about how do you start playing hockey, how do you learn to ice skate, how do you learn to handle a puck, how do you join a hockey league.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we are in the entertainment game, right? There's tons of books about the top. There's a million people that could tell you why Joe Rogan moved to Texas and signed with Spotify, right? Nobody knows how Joe Rogan started the podcast.
Yeah.
And I want to be the guy that talks about like step one and maybe step two. And then there's a million resources from there. But I think there's not a lot of information of if you live in a town where there's not a lot of open mics, how do you get enough stage time and think about being good enough to do a club or headline or do anything in comedy?
Yeah, like where is step one? Where I want to start in step one is you wrote a book about this. It's Microcosm Publishing.
Yep.
By the time this comes out, it will be ready.
Yeah, February 25th it comes out. So if you're gonna make this evergreen, it's out. It's out now. It's coming out later this week. So it's out there for you to buy at microcosmpublishing.com, Amazon.com. It'll be in some bookstores.
All right, and the name of it?
It's called Stand Up and Laugh. Produce comedy shows and create a sense of community.
Yeah, it's great. I got my pre-order. Well, I didn't get it, but I pre-ordered.
Appreciate that, man.
Yeah, no problem. I love what they're doing, Microcosm. Like I was looking on the website, it just seems like a lot of like self-publishing help and
I think what they do and what I would say drew me to them, but I did propose the book to a couple different publishers, but I think why I found a good match there, right? Is that their whole thing is what's going on where they are is similar to what we have going on in Asbury Park, right? And they want to expose these little micro scenes to kind of help other similar scenes develop, right? They realize they're lucky enough to be in this very small kind of enclosed literary community in Pacific Northwest, and they kind of saw that what we had going on in Monmouth County, New Jersey was similar, and they want to let other people know about it, which was really a really good fit. So they linked me up with a great editor named Molly Seamus. She was great to work with. And now we're putting out a zine, which if you guys remember like the 90s punk rock pre-blog era, it's about a 50-page mini book of what what I had to say in the real book, which is about 300 pages. So this is kind of, if this works and it sells and there's an audience for it, I'm going to hopefully stay with Microcosm and publish a whole book in 2022. If not, hopefully I sell enough to get another publisher interested or self-publish or whatever the next step is. But this is really the tip of the iceberg, which I think is good. It's a good tip of the iceberg, but there's more to be said about this once this hopefully hits the ground running.
Yeah. So I'm a comic. I'm in Duluth, Minnesota. There's no scene. What is my step one?
Okay. I think there's a section of the zine called First Steps, right? And kind of 5 things you could do right off the bat to get started. And the first thing you got to do is do some research, get a lay of the land, and see what's going on, right? Because a lot of times there's more stuff going on in areas than you might think. And for example, one of the best, not best, I'm really blowing myself up doing this. One of the longest running open mics in New Jersey is what we do every Monday at the Brighton Bar, right? And it was great for 2 years. The pandemic shut it down for about 3 months. They had an outdoor stage. We were one of the first things back going. We jumped right back on the horse as soon as we could, right? But if that's happening, don't start a mic next door on the same night. That's not going to work for you, right? So figure out what's going on and work around it, right? If you're in a college town, doing an open mic on a Saturday when the entire town is at the college football game is silly. But maybe a Friday night you get the coffee shop and you get it going that way and it works. But I think get a lay of the land, right? That's the first thing. I think people sometimes get to an area or they don't know what's going on in the area and they're kind of playing outside the lines. When I'm not saying you shouldn't try to stir things up. I mean, that there's an element that you should do. But at the same time, there's some things that you make harder for yourself by not playing within the confines of what's already there. Like one thing I always go out of my way to do is if I'm hosting a mic and I know there's a big show or a headliner in the surroundings like 20, 25 miles, I'll start my thing early. I'll start it late. I'll let people leave early that are going. Because in my opinion, there's very few chances in a place like Monmouth County, New Jersey, where you could do an open mic at 7 o'clock and then go and see a headliner at 9 o'clock. It does happen sometimes. So if we can make that happen for people, let's make it happen. You saying, this is my mic, and I'm mad you booked a headliner across the street the same night, and you got to pick, who wins?
No one.
No, everybody loses if you do that, right? So I think the other thing is, it's going to sound a little like Kumbaya, we are the world. But the competition thing, I think, is so overrated. I think there's enough mics, there's enough stages, there's enough places to do things where you can't be mad or try to stop somebody else from doing something. Because the example, and you're a hockey guy, I use the basketball example in the book, right? But if you look at most sports, there's cities that sometimes aren't even huge cities that have a disproportionate amount of talent come out of those cities, right? So in the NBA right now, there's New York, which has always been a thing. There's LA, which has always been a thing in basketball. And now there's Toronto, the last 10 years, say, right? So if you look at what happens is, those are cities where they have playgrounds where you have to be the best player to get on the court because they're being used all the time, right? They have the best AAU programs that feed kids to the best colleges. There's a status attached to being a good basketball player in those cities, right? So if you look at it through the prism, there's not a genetic component where people that are born in New York City are better than people born in New Jersey. But those kids that have the genetic raw material to be good at basketball are giving the best coaching, the most playing time, the best competition to get to that next level and play in college or the NBA, right? Comedy's the same thing. If you look at how many comedians are either from or got their start in New York, LA, Boston, or Chicago, it's way disproportionate to any other city in the country. You might put Austin, Texas in it now, maybe, right? Just the way the world's changing and stuff. But in general, those 4 or 5 cities produce like 80% of the comics that are making a living at this. So I think if you could kind of look at it through that prism, and in those basketball cities, nobody says there's too many basketball courts, there's too many AAU teams. No, because every chance is a chance to get better and develop talent. I think comedy-wise, you got to look at the same thing, right? If you live in New York or LA right now, you could do probably 5 mics every night of the week during the pandemic. Right? You could probably do 10 a night in a regular world. And they don't coincide with each other. You just take public transit to do it. If you live in Long Branch, New Jersey, that's not an option, right? No. But can we make a world where I could host Brighton Bar on Monday, you could host at another venue on a Tuesday, somebody does something on a Wednesday, and it really starts spiraling and we can really get better? Because my thing is, if you can't perform, you can't get better.
Exactly. Especially with comedy.
There's even the handful of people that are like like so preternaturally gifted at being funny. Without performing, it's almost impossible, right?
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is you can't perform in most cities. The other thing I think too is that if you kind of build that environment wherever you are, if you're lucky enough or make the decision to go to that next level and move to an LA and New York and Austin, Texas, you're going to be better when you get there. Right?
Yeah.
There's people that, I mean, I'm aware of people that have moved to cities like that to do comedy or break in the entertainment industry and have almost no resume or practice whatsoever. And that's literally like never, it's like you played basketball in front yard a few times and you put a Knicks jersey on and go to Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
You can't be surprised that doesn't work out, right? But if you start playing every day when you're 5 and play on your JV team and then your varsity team and then you play in college, then you get to Madison Square Garden, you might be ready. You might not. It doesn't always work, but you got a much better shot if you got those 10,000 hours, to use a cliche, or those many reps under your belt than if you didn't have it.
Yeah, shout out Malcolm Gladwell.
That
10,000 hours thing, like that's huge. That's what I chase.
Yeah, I think it's a thing where, and I think we're seeing it more now in comedy than ever, of older comics actually getting better.
Yeah.
You really are. You're seeing even the greats right now. You look at Chris Rock, at Dave Chappelle, Joey Coco Diaz. They look great, but they're older guys. They're in their 50s, and these guys have been funny for 30 years already. Yeah. But I think they're funnier right now than they were when they were 25 or 30.
Yeah. Bill Burr, like that. That's,
sure.
I mean, he's got to be like at least 49, if not in his 50s, and he definitely, like, I think he's progressively gotten better. Where there's not even like there used to be a dip. You know, like I feel like a comic would hit like 39, and then it would start to like, all right, life has been explored. Now I'm just kind of doing this.
Well, can I run something by you?
Oh yeah.
I think, and you tell me if you disagree with this. Previous generations, people kind of quote unquote grew up, right? And they stopped being connected to pop culture and young people, and they were set in their ways and they didn't change.
Yeah.
Right? Now with social media, the internet, the way our society in America just prizes the young so much. We have people in their 40s, 50s, 60s that are making jokes that are appealing to 20-year-olds. Whereas when I was younger, the older comics like old guys, right?
Yeah.
But now I'm in my early 40s, and I listen to new music every Friday because it's easy on Spotify. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I'm around young people all the time, and I watch the TV shows everybody in the 20s and 30s watches. So like I always make the joke of when my dad was in his 40s, he was a grown man. He didn't want to go see no superhero movies. He didn't want to watch cartoons with me. He wasn't playing Nintendo. I'm in my 40s. I have a 5.5-year-old daughter. I bought her a Nintendo Switch for Christmas. I'm playing it more than her.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait to watch Wonder Woman 1984 with my daughter.
Yeah.
In a way, like my dad would have dragged himself to come and see Tim Burton Batman, but he was an adult, and I'm an adult. Like I pay my bills. I have a day job. I think I take care of my family pretty well, but like I'm still I still want to be like a young person at heart.
Yeah, and like I think that really comes from down to like what I've been realizing is the time factor. Like my dad had 2 jobs. He didn't have time to have interests. Like now my dad is like, I feel like he is like struggling to find interests. And like I can't blame him because like he had the massive responsibility of raising a family through the 80s, 90s, and aughts, I guess.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, yeah. And like now the like people like my age who like maybe aren't having 3 kids, who maybe have 1 kid, maybe they just have a dog.
Right.
But now technology has made it to where we have time, and now we're like struggling to find things to do, which produces our desire to stay relevant also.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing in the comedy world that we just talked about, those guys that are older and still seem to be getting better, they're at a weird place, right? The generation of comics before them, if you were 50 and you had a fan base and you could do Johnny Carson a couple nights a year and do Vegas for a month at a time, you could make a living, right?
Yeah.
I think in the way the world got in the last 10 years, if you don't keep cultivating new fans and stay relevant on social media, you really fade away. For better or worse. And we've seen comics, we've seen musicians, we've seen athletes that have retired that should be still like pop culture figures just kind of go away without being relevant to the young kids today. Because they're just biologically, your fan base will die out as they get older. Yeah. If you don't keep appealing to young people and staying in the public eye, it's just kind of a wrap.
Yeah. And like that's the thing that I don't understand with people with comedy, where they'll be like, oh, I saw that comedian 3 years ago. I don't need to see him again. And like I think that's because people you have like the Jerry Seinfeld mindset, where like Jerry Seinfeld cultivated his hour, and his hour was his hour for 6 years.
Yeah.
You know, and like I'm not calling you out, Jerry Seinfeld. Not that. But now I feel like so much of it, like I saw Mark Norman 4 times during the pandemic, and like a lot of it was different.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, it's almost like, I don't want to speak for you, but for me personally, right? I want my comics, the people I pay to go see, not my friends that I do mics with and do shows with at the Jersey Shore, but the people I pay to go see. I almost want them to be more of a personality and a point of view that I like. And then I want to see their take on things, right? Yeah. Like at the end of 2020, Andrew Schultz did a 4-hour special on Netflix, which was called Schultz Saves America, right? Yeah. And I like his point of view. I agree with a lot of the way he views the world. And when I don't, I still think he's funny presenting stuff I disagree with, right? So I couldn't wait to see him do 4 hours, just what's happening in the world right now, right? Yeah. Now, I think that was successful. Everybody we know watched it and we talked about it. So I'm assuming they're going to do it again next year, right? He's not going to do the same events. You're going to cover different things. Yeah. So like I think the model now is and the podcast makes it a little bit easier. You have a personality, you become a character. If that character is largely yourself, and then your fans want to tune in to find out what your take on whatever this week's news is on your podcast, whatever this year's news is on your special.
Yeah, definitely. And like it's a fun time to do comedy right now because like while I definitely agree with you there and like seeing like people on a week to week basis like I want to know Joey Diaz's take on just life in general all the time. Like, not just the pandemic. Like, I want to see him growing up. And, like, I really admire people who work at a bit, but also incorporate modern stuff. Yeah. That's kind of like what I try to do.
Well, I think the podcast model is kind of interesting, right? And I look at and it's not that I had the code cracked on podcasts by any means, but for the last year I've been doing this thing called Me and My Cousins. It's me, I'm in my 40s, I got another cousin in his 30s, his name's Mike, another cousin in his 20s named Kenny, right? Yeah. So we grew up together, we grew up hanging out together, but that 10-year difference is we view the world differently in a lot of ways. Kenny grew up with social media and SoundCloud. I grew up no internet barely and going to Sam Goody to buy CDs, right? So the world's different. Yeah. But so what we try to do is every week we start the show off with like, what's going on in the world today? What's the coronavirus vaccine up to? What's going on in the schools? Whatever it is. Yeah. And then I bring in a guest and we kind of talk about the guest, about what the guest does. So it's like you hear our take on what's going on in the world, and then you hear this other kind of, in our case, it's an interview, but it could just easily be a bit or rehearsed skit or whatever. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. Yeah. And that's kind of those are kind of, in my opinion, kind of the best podcasts. Yeah. You get some topical stuff and some kind of evergreen stuff that's going to be cool forever.
And I love your guys' dynamic together, too, because like it's like the generations, I feel like generations now are divided by decade. We're no longer this 30-year gap.
I agree, especially the last couple decades, man. So much has changed from the 90s to 2010s. Yeah. It's almost, we live in a different world. And the last year, we live in a completely different world than we did just in 2019, really.
Yeah. So like step 1, check out what's out there in the comedy scene. Like, I think there's a website called Bodslava is where I found my first open mic. There will be information on what's going on around you out there. You just have to look for it. Step 2, you find a couple people doing some things. Where do you go from there?
I think the biggest thing is to kind of go to what's happening now, right? Even if it's improv, it's community, if it's anything related to what you want to do, start to know the players, right? Yeah. Get comfortable and be friends with. I know there's this weird thing that stand-up comics can't stand improv, and both groups hate spoken word poetry normally. Yep. And the joke I always make, and it's even in the book, but I'm not saying it here. That's to an outsider. All of that's the same, and it's all ridiculous to anybody outside the scene, right? It's literally like a high school cheerleader hating the gymnasts and the divers because it's like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? But like, get involved in that stuff, man. Like I've had great shows opening up for improv groups. Yeah. So you can clown improv people all you want. I've had great times and great relationships doing stuff with them. I've never done improv myself. I've just opened up for them. Same thing with the music community, right? I've hosted out and release parties. I've done sets between bands. I've done stuff like that. And then at the Jersey Shore, probably the most important thing that came out of that was relationships with music venues. Because if you want to start an open mic or a show in a restaurant or a coffee shop or whatever it is, you need your own mic, you need a PA system, you need lighting. It's not built for that. Music venues are built perfectly for what you're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly.
There's almost no investment.
Yeah.
So like I say, we fell kind of lucky into the Brighton Bar. It's a legendary music venue. They have the best lighting. They have great acoustics. They have a sound guy there for us every Monday.
Yeah.
We're just so lucky to have access to that if we were doing that exact same mic in a coffee shop, it might be a great coffee shop, but we just don't have that stuff. It doesn't happen. That doesn't exist.
Yeah, and like I've done mics in coffee shops where like a wire goes bad. That's the end of the mic. There's no extra wires there, you know, like.
So I think look at those non-traditional venues in general. I think music venues where we live have really been instrumental to what we're able to do because of what the technology they have in the building and the expertise they have working that technology in the building. Yeah. But then I've done cool shows in comic book stores, record stores, just all these weird off the beaten path places. Yeah. And if you live in New York City, there's no reason to ever go to an open mic in a laundromat. It's ridiculous. There's enough mics in comedy clubs. Right?
Yeah.
But if you live in Montana and your boy owns a laundromat and he'll give you the Monday night slot, maybe try something there. Why not?
Yeah. And especially now, like I feel like venues are going to be hungry for people when things, even before things open up. Like,
well, what I talk about is there's an entry in the zine called "Timing is Everything," right? And what I say is, for as much credit as I get for what I've done and what my age group has done in Asbury Park, we were all, myself 100% included, in the right place at the right time. So 2013 Asbury Park is in the transition from the 90s grimy, you don't even think about going to Asbury Park as a vacation spot, to the 2010s multi-million-dollar condominiums and great restaurants and big-time touring bands, Corona Stone Point and Summer Stage, right? Yeah. But so during a transition is you got these real estate developers that built really nice venues, and you got bars and restaurants that got new ownership groups and revamped everything inside the place, right? Yeah. So on the weekends and the summer, they're making money, right? Nobody's going there yet on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays in January. Yeah, no. So what we really stepped into was you had these venues that are getting, they're paying rent, they're paying for the liquor license, they're paying insurance, they're paying wait staff all year, and they're only making money a couple months. So if you could bring some revenue into them on a Tuesday in February, you can do that show every Tuesday for the whole year. Yeah. And we really hit that right on the head. We're right now. I'm not saying you can't do that in Asbury right now. You definitely can. Younger people than me will do it when this pandemic's over. But it's much harder because there's more of a structure of, we always have this band come in on Monday, and then we have this DJ on Tuesday, and this cover band on Wednesday. Where 7 years ago it was the Wild West of venues that needed revenue, and a bunch of comics that want to help them do it, and we're really able to do it. Yeah. That's what I always say is, like, coming up in that environment, everybody views not having access to comedy clubs as a detriment. I think when you really look at it, it's a good thing. It's a positive. Look at the negative, it's really a positive, because now there's no rules. You know what I mean? I use it as a little bit of a tired cliche, but you could buy a house in a suburban development, or you could go and tame the Wild West in the wilderness, right? Yeah. They both have good and bad to them, but the person that's out there kind of beating their own path has way more flexibility. Now, they might fail a lot easier, it might be harder, but they could do way more things that you can't do if you just go buy a prefab house and move into it, right? Yeah. So I think that cliche kind of works, but it's kind of like you could do all these weird things in towns that don't have anything yet that you can't do in a town with an established arts entertainment scene. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that's why I can't recommend just talking to venues enough. Like is with Danny Braff, runs like 6 successful shows already, booking national headliners. We went to Easton, PA, and he stopped in every restaurant, every little venue, every art gallery, and he just asked.
Yeah. And what he did, and I'm gonna guess he did this. I don't know Danny as well as you do. I met him a couple times. He seems like a really nice guy. Yeah. But I'm gonna guess he's done to make those shows work is he does something a lot of, not just community, but artists in general don't understand. You got to make your proposition valid and beneficial to the venue, right? Yeah. If you walk into a venue like, I want to do this open mic because it's good for the scene, a guy that's paying to turn the lights on and pay the wait staff, and they're going to laugh at you, right? Yeah. But if you walk in and say, I could bring 20 people in on a Monday when you're slow, everybody's going to be 21 years old and buying drinks and buying dinners or whatever it is, and it's going to make you $1,000 on a weeknight that you wouldn't have made any money without the event, it becomes way more palatable, right?
Yeah.
So I think you got to make what you're doing, you got to be a salesman a little bit and make what you're doing and what you want to do work for the person you want to do it with. And then, do it in a way that's going to be beneficial to everybody.
Yeah, yeah. So now we're doing it. We got places to do it. What else do you think is a really important step in developing the scene?
I think I kind of touched on it earlier, but encouraging other things to happen, right?
Yeah.
And then I think to some extent, once it starts to flourish a little bit, documenting the scene becomes important, right? Podcast, YouTube videos, and posting each other's stuff and getting as many eyes on each other's things as you possibly can. I think at this level, comedy beef is ridiculous. Like I just don't get it. I don't understand why you would do that to yourself.
Yeah.
We're really, to use another cliche, the fifth one of the night or whatever it is. The rising tide rises all ships.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think if there's more stuff going on, everybody kind of benefits. But document what you're doing. It's never been easier to do a podcast, to make a YouTube documentary, to at the bare minimum post on social media about when your shows are, and if you get a poster made, make sure as many people as possible see that, and just kind of document what's going on, because I think that only snowballs the effect of what you're doing. And then from there, I would say start reaching out to local media, right? Social media is great. So you can argue it's the best way to promote stuff, but I think right below that is the local newspapers, the local websites, the community calendars. People still use those, right? Yeah. So and then the smart ones have either a physical newspaper or a website, and then they have social media accounts that direct you to their calendars, whatever it is. So I think really reach out to those and form relationships with those local media companies. I've made great friends in the last 5-6 years of the local writers and photographers that are just cool, just want to cover stuff. Their job is to figure out what's going on and tell their readers about it. Help them tell them what's going on. And also, if you are a artist of any kind and you don't go out of your way to be great with photographers, you're a fool, because they can make you look horrible. That's why every time I see a photographer in the Asbury Park Press, I get them a water, I see if they want a beer, buy them a hamburger, whatever, because they kind of control how you look to some extent.
And let's give a shout out to the guy you had come by at the Comedy Fight Club. Those pictures were great.
I'll shout him out again. His name's Jeff Crespi. His website is Jeff Crespi Rocks. He took the cover photo of the book that you guys will see when it comes out next week.
Awesome.
It wasn't meant for that. I was just doing a show at House of Independence, and it was like the best picture of me ever taken. So we went ahead and used that. And actually, Greg, the owner of Brighton Bar, set him up at Comedy Fight Club, not me. I just happened to be friends with him and we hung out that night. But he's a great photographer and does if you need album or headshots, I think he's the guy to reach out to.
Yeah, those pictures are amazing. Shout out to the guys doing Comedy Fight Club, Mark Henley, Matt Marin. I don't know how to say your last name.
I think it's Marin.
I think so too.
That is a fun event. Am I right when I say that?
Oh my God, it's so fun.
Yeah, I think those guys hit on something that I hadn't thought about before, and it's weird because I like stand up, which is obvious, right? Yeah. I like the pro wrestling sports bravado of things, and I love hip hop and battle rap, and they just put them all together in a way that is just awesome. I mean, I only got to be on one so far, unfortunately, but I want to do it every time if they'll have me back.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and that kind of brings me to something that I think is ridiculously important in comedy. When I started, I was just nice to everybody. I wasn't overpowering in my opinions of things. I came in, I just made myself there. I came in early and I stayed late at things, even if I didn't talk to anybody before or after them. But the more people saw me, I think people got comfortable with me. And once I was able to start kind of developing those friendships, it's done wonders for my confidence on stage. You get feedback from the people that you meet. And I think being a good person in a scene is the highest of importance.
Yeah, man. And unfortunately, that's one of those that should go without saying, but it needs to be said. Yeah. I think the entertainment game in general and the artistic world kind of attracts some people that maybe are not what you said. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It attracts a lot of young people that maybe don't understand that yet. And then this weird thing of if you just grow up wanting to do stand-up, and you watch it on TV, but there's really very little documentation of what's going on behind the scenes, right? And I think, unfortunately, we hear about like comedians having beef, like Joe Rogan and Carlos Mencia or whatever. You don't ever hear about these guys that are good friends and like doing shows together and just they bounce material off each other. That's a boring story.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at even all comedians have that crew or circle they run with, and that's how you get better. Like what I always say, I look at open mics as going to the gym, and I look at shows as the games, right? Yeah. So we're practicing at Brighton Bar every Monday. Yeah. And whatever I've been good at in my life, from whatever level of comedy you think I'm good at, listen to this, to marathons I've run, to my background playing sports extensively. When I was practicing those things, I got incredibly comfortable with the environment and the people I was with that allowed me to get outside my shell and try some new things. Yeah. I think that's one thing I try to do at Brighton Bar all the time is make it comfortable to try new stuff. Because I think when you go to mics and it's a very tense environment and everybody thinks you're going to get the light early if you don't do good and you can't try new stuff, I don't know how you get better under that kind of stress. Yeah. Now, that being said, when it's showtime and there's a crowd that paid money to see you, there's an element of stress that 100%, right? Yeah. But I feel like you should have so many reps of what you know works, and then try some stuff that doesn't work. By the time you get in front of a real crowd, you feel good about it. And then say, for example, you do a show on a Saturday and crush with your A material, right? I think on Sunday night, if you show up at a mic, you should be ready to try something totally different. Yeah, and just see what you're going to do at the next show, because, like you said, that guy with the tight 5 or the tight hour even, people aren't paying to see that anymore. Yeah. And especially today where it's on Spotify and YouTube, and you know the guy or girl's doing the same thing again, why would you ever leave your house?
Exactly. Yeah. It's, and, I wouldn't worry about building a fan base right away. Like, that should never be step one. But like, how do you get the community involved in a scene, do you think?
The community outside of the comedians themselves?
Yeah.
Well, I think a couple things you could do. One, I think really go after coverage in local media, right? Yeah. And get to the point where if the readers don't see you for a week, in our case, the Tri-City News or Asbury Vibes or someone's publications, they think like something happened to you. Like, just be there all the time, right? Number two, I think be out in the streets. Be at, when the world's normal again, be at bars, be at nightclubs, be at album release parties, be where people could see you, right? Yeah. Some of this, by me just being a big hip hop head and being at a lot of the hip hop stuff in Asbury Park, those rappers, DJs, promoters, producers have come to my shows, right? Yeah. And it was kind of a mutual respect for each other. I got asked those album release parties because of that. That if I just didn't leave my house those nights, none of that would be happening, right? Yeah. The podcast is a great way to kind of document what's going on in your scene and bring in some listeners from outside. If nothing else, because if your friends and family listen, and let's say, for example, I bring you on to me and my cousins, and now 10 of my family members know who Tim Rager is. If I book a show next year and you're on the lineup, they'll go, I remember him from Angelo's podcast. We're going to go check it out this time. Where if they didn't know you, they might not. Yeah. I think it's a very slow way to kind of get that snowballing effect, but I think it does work long term. And the other thing I say in the book pretty extensively is work with the community. Like, I've done events before for Special Olympics, for a New Jersey organizing project. If you can put an event together and raise some money for a good cause, all of a sudden you're valuable and you're doing good things in the community. And I think one thing I hate about comedy, because I'm pretty straight-laced. I have a family. I don't use drugs. I work out. Not that I'm the best guy ever, but I'm not what the media wants you to believe a stand-up comic is, right? Yeah, just a drug-using, drunken degenerate that can't stay with the same woman. Like, I'm not that guy, right? Yeah. And I think when you start to do those good things in the community, become a face of, not every stand-up comic is Artie Lang, you kind of have a little bit higher standing in the community and can do something and help people. I feel one thing I feel really good about in Monmouth County, over the last 5-6 years, I've raised tens of thousands of dollars for different causes, right? Oh, wow. Just by making people laugh. We did the, every Thanksgiving, we do the food drive at Brighton Bar, right? Yeah. So that's every comic, it's just so people know at home. Normally we do 5-minute sets at Brighton, and you don't pay me. You buy a drink at the bar and tip the bartenders out, and we call it even. But once a year they do a thing or I do a thing where every food item you donate to the Prosper Foundation, you get that amount of time on stage, right? So if you bring 20 cans of pumpkin pie filling, you get 20 minutes on stage that night. And pre-COVID, we would do it like 2 a.m. We had to cut it short this year because of state curfew and stuff. Yeah. But like all of a sudden, like now the story on social media and the reality is that there's not 100, maybe 20 families in Monmouth County having a Thanksgiving dinner that they don't have unless we did that event, right? And I think that kind of stuff is really invaluable. Number one, I think karma in the universe, it's good for everybody. Yeah, definitely. And number two, it's just good to help your community out.
Yeah, the pile of food that you had to load into your car was amazing.
Yeah, and dude, two things I always say, and I have this book coming out now, and I'm on a daily basis proud to be a part of this community, right? Yeah. But then there's certain days and nights where I'm like 10x proud to be a part of it. And that every year, that's one, because every year, everybody comes through. You know what I mean? And it's November, and it's cold, and people probably got their own Thanksgiving to get ready for. They're starting to do Christmas shopping. They're working a lot that time of year. And they come out, and they stay all night, and they bring baskets of food with them. You know what I mean? The other time, I want to shout you out, man, and how tight-knit this community is. The night I announced the book, which was a Monday at the Brighton Bar, and I just kind of explained what it was and said, any help you can give me, you guys can give me, I really appreciate. By the time I left 2 hours later, I had booked 3 podcasts, including this one, Foul Housemates, and What the Heck with Richard Dweck. So I think that's where where we can all win. If somebody's doing something cool and 3 of you guys all decide we need to talk about this thing on my platform, because best believe when you got something coming out, you're going to be the first guy on me and my cousins. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that's kind of the way it's got to work. But I think we do it. I think the other thing in comedy, man, it's so it can be so cutthroat, right? It can be so every man for himself. I'm a lone wolf. And I'm not naive. I think at a certain level, it is absolutely that. Like if me and you are going to battle out, and only one of us getting a Netflix special and 6 figures, we got to go to war. We got to feed our families, right? But if we're at this level, and so you got to show at the Saint this month, I didn't get booked on it, I'm going to go and watch and laugh and have a good time. I'm not going to waste time being mad at you about that. And then next month, maybe I'll get it. Maybe you'll get it again. And if you get it 3-4 times in a row, then we might have a beef. But as long as it goes back and forth a little bit, we can be friends and have a good time.
See, and that's the thing, like being nice, being available and present at things, and having something to bring to the table. Like I was telling you, I started this podcast because I want to be the tide that raises ships. Like I want to put my drops of water into that tide, and like that will help you more than you can imagine.
Yeah, definitely, man. There's a time and a place for competition, and there's a reason for it in this game, no question. Yeah. But I don't think in most local scenes you gain a lot by being super competitive.
Gain nothing.
You're right. I don't understand why that's a thing. So
be competitive with yourself. Try to have a better set than you had the last set.
Yeah. Well, you know what I always say: if you're always the funniest guy at, say, the Brighton Bar, say you're always the funniest person on a Monday night at Brighton Bar, you're the king of that castle. That's a real small castle. Yeah. You got to get funny. And what I love about Brighton and this community in general, we'll use Brighton as a small example, it's never the same funniest person Monday night. Like, there's on any night, we're limited to 20 comics right now because of the social distancing laws and stuff like that. But on any given night, any one of those 20 people could crush. Yeah. And what I kind of like about it too, and I clue myself in this, any one of those 20 can bomb. Yeah. I've had sets there when I'm running the room that went horribly. You know what I mean? But that's how you know your people are keeping it real. Yeah. That's how you know they're not clapping because they like you. They're clapping or not because they like the material, which means if you make that room laugh, you go use it somewhere else. Yeah. It's not just kind of pity claps and there's no participation trophies there. No,
not at all. That's one of the things I love about that room. I always say you bring your material and you'll be able to edit it right there. Yeah, immediately.
And man, I do think that's a valuable thing. Having a room like that is huge. Where people kind of, unfortunately now, that not a lot of new people can be let in because of the way the list has to go out on Saturday and there's limited type of people who can get in. But where it's the same, say it's like 30 different people fill those same 20 spots every week, basically, right? You got to kind of have new stuff or at least a new take on something or something new every week. Yeah. Because if you just do the same stuff over and over again, even if it's great, people kind of let you know they're bored of it right away.
Yeah, which is like my favorite bit of comedy is the minute edits. So like right now, this is like so frustrating for me because I'm like, well, what if I turn this statement into a question? Does that bring you in more? But
it's also this weird thing where like it's never done. Yeah. Like even if you were to release an album and think you had it perfect, literally the next morning you wake up and be like, I should have done X. I should have breathed there. I should have paused here. Yeah. Which I think just for your sanity, you have to at some point be done with something. You know what I mean? You got to move on from it. But I would imagine even comics that are on TV every day, like someone like Ellen that does a show every day, she's got to go home and just think, like, oh, I could have done this different, or I would have done this different. Then apparently she's just horrendously mean to everyone around her about it.
We're getting close to time here. Is there anything you wanted to touch on before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, I think that covers it pretty good. The rest of the info's in the zine. More info than that'll be in the book. And then I think the last thing I'll say as a piece of advice to someone, now I'm in no position to give people advice. I have a day job. I drive a very sensible car. I'm not blowing up by any means. But I do think whether it's comedy, whatever you want to do it now.
Yeah.
Almost nobody looks back in life and says, oh, I started blank too early and now I'm too good at it, right? Just realize you're going to be bad in the beginning because everybody's bad at it. Put the time in and decide if you like it now, and don't look back on something you're going to, don't let it be the one that got away. If you like it, find an open mic, start a mic, whatever, and get going and see if it's for you. It might not be, but at least now you know.
Yeah. My good friend doesn't do comedy, Brian Harima. I was talking to him. I was like, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to start. And he's like, just do it. And I was like, that's not what I wanted to hear.
Right.
Because I was scared to start. I didn't want to just start. I wanted to have the list of things in front of it. Get rid of that list. You don't need it. Even if you don't have anything written, go to an open mic. Go to an open mic. Go to an open mic. You don't have to go up. But I guarantee you, once you get there, and almost every comic I talked to who was like, that was their mindset, they went there, they're like, what am I scared of? And they almost either went up that night or went to a mic the next night.
And also, would you agree when I have these list of things I want to have in place before I do comedy? You could still do that list while you're going to open mics.
Yeah.
Like your to-do list doesn't have to end. You could just say you want to write an hour a day or whatever, right? Well, you can do that on nights you don't go to an open mic. You can do everything you want to do. You could do while you're doing mics and seeing if it's for you or not.
Yeah.
So I think there's no reason to wait. There's just you got to get out there and do it. There's no other really excuse for that.
Yeah. You want to plug socials and?
Yeah, man. Angelo Gingerelli on all social media. Mr. Fifth Round at MR the number 5 THRUND. Once a week, my two little cousins do a podcast called Me and My Cousins. We kind of talk about the events of the world, and then we bring on guests from the comedy world, the music world, the business world. Yeah, we kind of bring people in from everywhere. And the main reason for that is, during the pandemic, so many comics started podcasts interviewing other comics. And they're great. I listen to almost everybody's that I know, but that story's being told. Somebody beat me to it. So I'm trying to tell a different story of what's going on and how people are getting through 2020 and 2021. And then Stand Up and Laugh is available. You can pre-order now. It comes out on February 25th on microcosmpublishing.com. It'll be in some bookstores and Amazon.com, but microcosmpublishing.com is probably the best place to get it.
Yeah, I'll post a link. I wanna say thank you very much for hosting the Brighton Bar and having that space be so welcoming, because it was a venue that I was afraid of, and then after the first time I went up there, I felt part of. So thank you.
Well, thank you, man. I'm gonna speak for everybody right now. We're super lucky you started coming out. You were funny the first time I saw you. You've gotten progressively funnier since then, and you're an asset to what's going on there, man. So thanks for having a podcast, and thanks for coming out every Monday.
Yeah, thank you. I got a show March 25th, Scotty's Comedy Cove. Hit me up if you want tickets. I'll help you get them. Anything else?
That's it, man. Thank you. I hope I taught Tim something.
Yeah. No, I definitely learned. Play us out, Tim. Tim's kinda dumb, let's help him get smart. It's time to teach Tim stuff. We're good time-wise?
Yeah, definitely. That works for you, what we did?
Yeah, that's all.
There shouldn't be too many edits or anything, right?